The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, I've put our names down, you'll be pleased to know, for Jeff Bezos' space program. I thought, well, they've put everybody up there now. William Shatner went up a couple of weeks ago. I don't think they've had yet wedding photographers. So they're putting the first 90-year-olds into space. They're putting the first teachers into space. They're sort of gradually all these labels. And I thought, what about the first wedding photographers in space?
It'd be us. Yeah, that's it. We can take some nice pictures out the windows.
What about the first wedding in space? That's never been done.
It's going to happen, isn't it? It's definitely going to happen. That's on the cards.
Oh, but then they'll need a wedding photographer. I tell you what, who's putting their hands up for that one? I would definitely.
I'm with Prince William on this. I think they should, can off space and start concentrating on our planet before they start concentrating on space. But there you go. It's miserable me.
Okay. Yeah, but it's all, that's the advance of science, isn't it? That's the exciting thing about science.
It's the advance of capitalism.
No, it's space exploration, boldly going and all the rest of it.
That only super rich people can boldly go into.
I've taken our names off that list.
The FujiCast.
Let's go and save the Amazon instead.
Yes, there we go. I don't think Jeff would happily welcome us with open arms.
I don't know. I've spent billions on Amazon in my time, so maybe I might be top of the invitation list.
You must be somewhere near the top, yeah. Right, well, welcome to another FujiCast. You and your questions that you're sending into the Facebook group, or indeed you're sending in via the email to click@fujicast.co.uk. I think we're doing okay for questions at the moment, but usually winter signals are kind of well, there's two periods of the year. It's sort of as we get into the depths of winter, and as summer heats up in the northern hemisphere anyway, we usually have to say, come on, get your skates on, get a few more questions in. So do keep sending them in. We've planned nothing special for Christmas yet. I mean, last year we effectively cancelled Christmas, didn't we?
We didn't.
On the FujiCast. Oh yeah, Boris did. He cancelled Christmas, but
he cancelled it on Christmas Eve, didn't he?
Did he do it Christmas Eve?
Or the day before, or something like that.
Yeah.
He was right in the end. In fairness, he made the right choice.
Yeah. So we the year before, and maybe the year before that, we did some sort of panto thing, didn't we? Do you remember that with Gemma shouting out the window?
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. But we couldn't do it, so we had to can it. So I'm not quite sure. Are we planning something again this year for Christmas, Kev, or are we still being bar humbug about it?
It would be nice, yeah. I'm quite happy. I've got about 8 weddings in December, so I'm not sure when we'll be able to do it.
God, have you 8 weddings?
Well, no, maybe not 8, but I think 5 maybe.
Wow. Well, What have I been doing wrong? I've got loads of time to do a podcast. Anybody want to come and do a podcast? Kev will be out doing his weddings.
Yeah, I can borrow you my grumpy filter.
Is that an official grumpy filter?
Yeah.
Book of the week, Kev. What have you got?
Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo?
Tickety Boo.
Is that really the book of the week?
Tickety Boo. Charles Traub. Tickety Boo. Just released 2 weeks ago.
What's Tickety Boo about?
Tickety Boo, book of the week. Yeah, it's basically snapshots. He's a lauded photographer.
Yeah.
And he's done a few of these over the years. This is his latest load of them, mostly shot during the last 5 years, I think. All iPhone pictures. Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo. Why is he called it Tickety Boo, though? That doesn't sound very...
Well, Tickety Boo means, how are you doing? When people say to you, are you okay? And you say, yeah, I'm Tickety Boo. Tickety Boo kind of means, yeah, I'm all right, but actually I might not quite be all right. That's that's what Tickety Boo implies, doesn't it?
I thought Tickety Boo was, it's okay, we're just who says Tickety Boo anymore anyway?
Tickety Boo, I love it. I'm going to say it all day long now. It just trips off the tongue, doesn't it? Tickety Boo.
It's a proper quaint thing, isn't it? Tickety Boo.
Tickety Boo.
How are you, Tickety Boo? Where did you come from? Tickety Boo, I do like it. So snapshots. Even lauded photographers are allowed to make snapshots.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting book.
For a long while.
Hot off the press.
Hot off the press, yeah. For a long while, you called yourself a snapshotographer, didn't you? Which was kind of a shot across the bows, wasn't it? Wasn't it a cheeky shot across the bows that the reason why you called yourself a snapshotographer? There was It was an acquaintance of ours that had said something, wasn't there?
That's right. Yeah. There was a very well established wedding photographer who said, "You're just a snapshotographer."
That's it.
I updated
he didn't say that to your face, though, did he?
No, not to my face, but he didn't know I was behind him.
No.
These are just snapshots, he said.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was in a judging panel. Basically, he sat there with his arms folded, didn't even stand up and look at the pictures. Just said, I'm not looking at these snapshots.
He refused to look at your snapshots.
Yeah.
Or your pictures, right? I'm getting into his language.
Yeah. But I was behind him in the room. He didn't know that.
I'd forgotten that part of the story. That's terrible, Kev. Is this the same man that... Yes, terrible, Muriel. This is the same acquaintance or a photographer that refused to mentor me, wasn't it? He said, no, I think you'll find you've got better people that, because... Wasn't it the same one? I think it was. Because you have to be mentored to do some of the... Are we allowed to mention it? You have to be mentored, I think, to do the associateship, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I asked, I said, would you do it? And he said, no. And I thought he was joking. I said, yeah, well, it'd be great. No. Computer says no. Go and be mentored by your snapshotographer friend, Mullins. He didn't say that bit. But.
Yeah, that was it.
Right.
That was it.
Questions then. Do you want to go first or is it moi?
I'll go first. Why not? From the Facebook group, as is now tradition, starting from the latest one, which is 14 hours ago, Asim Khan says, hi guys, I'm sure that you have covered this question at some time or another, but what is your photo storage setup right now? How do you maintain recent work and organize your archives? That's very pertinent because I've just been through all of this.
You have, haven't you? I've had the same system for years. I use, because I'm a Mac man, I don't have to be a Mac man to use this, but I use G drives. Got some thumping big G drives.
G-Tech.
G-Tech. And
they work with PCs as well, by the way.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and one's one's here in the office. Another one is in another location, and then I have a dump down one that is across town in another secure location, and then the cloud. I think that's reasonably well covered. But I don't have. I've never. I think you use a far more complex system than mine.
I don't think it is. I've got so everything is on my. I've streamlined it all recently. I had archive drives and things like that were in cupboards and what have you, which I've just. I had loads of them. I've taken them all out, formatted them all, and given them all to my friends. So now I have a 36 terabyte drive, which is RAIDed. Yep. So about 16 terabytes of active storage, which has all of my archive stuff on it. And that is then sucked up to Backblaze, and all my business stuff and my, work, if you like, is on OneDrive, and that's it.
So you don't have another secure location where you... So I am making mine much more complex, aren't I, Kev?
Backblaze.
Yeah,
lives in the cloud. I mean, I am at the mercy of should my studio get hit by lightning and Backblaze go bust on the same day,
you're done.
Then I'm. But it's only my archive. So all of my basically the last 2 years worth of work as well is on Dropbox. So that works on a FIFO basis, first in, first out. Right. So I have 2 years. So come January, I will delete any from January 2019, which there were a couple before we got into lockdown, off Dropbox. So I have the most recent 2 years worth of work in Dropbox. All of everything else archives is in OneDrive and on my RAID. I'm pretty happy with the way I've got it, but people can overcomplicate it. As we both did. So it's easy to overthink this, I think.
Your RAID system. Do you have a system where you can take drives away so that you can snuggle up with them in bed?
No, but they can't. They're hot swappable. So if one drive fails, I can stick another one in, and I won't lose any data. No. But it's fine. I'm more than happy with it.
Good.
Yeah.
Ian Young says, "Good morning, chaps, or good afternoon, or good evening. I am a hobby photographer that has offered some paid work photographing. Has been offered some paid work photographing gardens and houses for a large building material manufacturer. They want shots of the finished projects to use for advertising on social platforms and brochures. The work will involve some driving, around 2 to 4 hours, and I estimate 3 hours shooting plus editing," which sounds actually very similar to some work that you've been doing, Kev. Has he gone for your work? You've taken Kev's job. What I'm struggling with is how to work. I think this is the question. This is a $64 million question. If you could charge that much, that would be nice. How to work out what to charge. Is there an hourly rate I should be looking for? Or is it better just to price jobs per job? Keep up the great show. Been listening since the start, and chip in on Patreon. Oh, you do, Ian, don't you? So thank you. He didn't bump to the front, that one. He just waited. You must be English, Ian. You're waiting in line. Now, you have been doing a very similar job to this. I have to say I don't charge per hour when I'm doing commercial work. It is a daily rate.
Yeah, same as me. So when I'm doing this kind of stuff, which is, it's not, it's basically turning up, taking pictures, no editing. I charge £600 for half a day, £800 for a full day, and 45p per mile. And sometimes some of these jobs I get more money on the mileage than I do on the shoot.
which is handy in a petrol shortage.
Yeah.
You notice, by the way, that the petrol stations have opened up. Well,
yeah,
a couple of weeks ago.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
That was 5 weeks ago now, really, when that was all kicking off.
Yeah, but I thought it was... Do you remember Bodger, as a presenter I listened to, said, this is going to go on till Christmas. I thought, no, surely not. But yeah.
I think there's still parts of the country where they're still, a little bit tight, but yeah, by and large.
So it's per job for you with a mileage rate. What about editing though, Kev? What happens when now that I've come unstuck with this because I have a similar day rate to you? I'm a bit cheaper, not much, but a little bit. You're reassuringly more expensive, as that advert goes. But what about now? I've come unstuck with this, and I wonder whether you've been through this as well. You've done the job, you've done the editing, but then you start getting a list of can we change this, and this. So that becomes then a post-processing thing that can take you into another day, perhaps, or even more.
Well, that doesn't happen. That's not happened for any of the commercial stuff I've done. But what I would say is that I think with all commercial, when you're talking to businesses, they're expecting to spend money. And if you say to them, yeah, I can do that, it's going to take me another half a day, and that's going to cost you another £600, they'll just say, okay. It's not their money, is it? Commercials, it's not, it's not the fellow who's writing the check, his money, it's the boss. So they don't really worry about it. But and also, I think that, if they did haggle about that kind of stuff, you just say, all right, I won't do it. That's how businesses work, isn't it? It's different, of course, weddings, because then you're not dealing with a business. You're dealing with it's a very different concept. There's a lot of emotional stuff going on, and there's expectations of work and all that kind of stuff. But I think for commercial stuff, if you've got to factor in your editing time into your pricing. So if you do need to edit the job, and it's 2 days, then you price for 2 days. And if there's any extras that come along, then they will pay for it. That's They don't want to expect stuff for free, businesses.
Do you know, on the retouching front, here's an interesting one to put to you, because I haven't had this I don't know if I've ever had this, but when I mentioned it to a couple of people, they'd said, oh, yeah, I've had that before. Now, I shot a wedding. Client's happy with wedding. No worries with that. So that's all good. But there's quite a few pictures to be retouched because one member of the family had problems with acne. Now, I do understand that. I see that. But of course, that has now meant that there's hours and hours of work to be done on retouching, where I've never worked in that way before. I like you, Kev, I do light retouching. So this is color correction, black and white conversion, cropping, dodging and burning, that sort of thing. But not whole scale skin retouching, because somebody who, is a family member, but not directly the person that I was photographing or had the contract with. How would you deal with that, Kev? I know what I've done. I'll tell you what I've done in a moment. But how would you deal with that?
Well, I would probably, it's never happened to me, but I would probably take the approach of saying, yeah, okay, no worries. I can look into, letting you know how much a retoucher would cost for that job.
Yep.
Then I'd speak to somebody like Michael Schilling in London, who does, he's got a retouching service, see how much he would charge. And then I would go back to the clients and say, this is how much it will be if you want it done. Your choice.
But Kevin,
that's the approach I would take.
I hired you and I thought you would retouch all the images. Just throwing that one in there, Kev.
Would I retouch the images?
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying as a client, I'm saying, but Kevin, I employed you to be my photographer and you retouch and turn things into black and white. I thought that would be all part of the cost.
No, dear customer, it's not part of the cost. It's natural. they couldn't. I mean, I don't know. It depends on your website and your marketing and everything. But I feel like I've covered the bases on for that for myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, of course, if part of your marketing and your product is that you do that and you offer that service and everything, then yeah, you're gonna have to go for it, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But not. I wouldn't. For me, I wouldn't say no, but I would offer them options. I'm certainly not going to sit there and do it. I just wouldn't.
Well, I in the end paid out of my own pocket for a £40 an hour for a retoucher to go through those and apply the work that needed to be done. Then changed my contract. So,
yeah, it's lessons learned, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Facebook.
What would you do next time?
Well, then I've got the contract to cover me, though, haven't I?
Yeah, but what does the contract say? That you just wouldn't do it, or that you would cost it?
No, in essence, what you've just said, retouching that's cosmetic will be quoted per job. And
it's different, of course, if you do much more traditional style wedding photography. If you're doing a lot of portraits and group shots and all that kind of stuff, then I think there's an expectation there.
Oh no, I never worry about moving the odd set of eyes around in a group shot, where you've got, nailed it, got that, brilliant, very happy with that one. But, you've closed your eyes. So I don't mind.
Never. Can you even do, is that a thing? You can do that, can you?
In Photoshop, just move a few eyes around. Yeah. Yeah, and if you can't find the right eyes, just borrow Granny's.
Yeah, loads of eyes on iStock photo, surely.
That's it, yeah. What eyes do you want? I want the ones with the Mullins eyebrows, please. That's extra. Right, your question, Facebook.
Right, okay, so this might be one for you because it's about an XH1, which I don't have. It's from Matt Sales. It says, I ran into a bit of a problem with my XH1 the other day when I tried to film some video up in the mountains.
Right.
The lowest my 18 to 55 mil, which stopped down, was f11. When I really needed to stop down to f16 because of the bright light.
Yeah.
As I was about 2 kilometers from my ND filter in the car, this proved to be a bit of a problem. Any idea why I couldn't use f16 in video mode?
Well, I don't know. Why would you not be able to stop down to f16? Surely you... Of course you can. You can... I'm sure f22 without a problem at all.
Yeah, that sounds peculiar.
That doesn't sound like that. I mean, I'd like to know whether that was 2 cameras or 1 camera, but there's no reason.
One camera, XH1. Oh, I see. Whether you think it would happen on another camera. Yeah. I don't. I mean, the 18 to 55 is an f16 lens. I mean, I can see it happen in the other direction if you're with a zoom lens that has a variable aperture. So 18 to 55, I think, is I'm not sure whether it's fixed or whether it's 2.8 to f4.
He's not talking about stopping up, though. He's talking about stopping down, isn't he?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I can't think of any reason why that would happen unless it's a physical, unless there is on the XH1 with that lens combination, a limit.
I'd have to try that, but I can't see why that wouldn't work. Glue an ND filter to you. I never go far without those ND.
If you're physically changing that aperture on the aperture ring,
it shouldn't make any difference.
It should be fine. If you have the aperture lock on and you're using, one of the auto modes, then that might be overriding it. But I don't think so. I mean, if you're shooting video, you're doing it all manually, probably. So
yeah, I don't. Yeah, knowing Matt, I can't imagine that he'd be using auto systems for video.
No. I wouldn't have thought so. No. In fact, he says here now I had 4K, 24p. Auto ISO, but that's fine. Shutter of 150.
I wonder. Let me try and find my XH1, Kev. I bet it's in the house. Hold on. Or have I put it in here? Oh, here it is. And he said 1855, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn this on. Let's recreate. What did he say? He had auto ISO. What else did he have? 4K.
4K, 24p.
24p.
1/50th.
No problem at all.
16.
Yep.
In video mode.
I'm in video, yeah.
Press record.
Yep.
It's not stopped it. It's not changed it to F something else on the heads up on the LCD.
Hold on. Let's try and force something else. No, I don't appear to be having a problem with that, Kev.
Yeah, good, Matt. It was either the mountain you were on is wrong.
Yeah.
Or maybe the cagoule you were wearing was broke or something like that. Maybe, I would imagine. Definitely not the camera and lens combination.
Oh, I think you've got gremlins under the bonnet. You have. Right. Sorry about that. We weren't any help with that.
Well, we were. We proved that that it works on your system.
Yeah. Bill Hartley. Right. We've just got enough time before we go to today's guest. Hi, Neil. Hi, Kev. Hopefully this transfusion of email, will reach you guys in time before the podcast flatlines. Well, that was a few weeks ago now, wasn't it? We did actually manage to pick up some good questions. Following the article on camera bag security, I'd like to comment on the Kensington lock. Oh, yeah, we talked about that, didn't we, Kev?
Yeah.
Yes, it's strong and durable, and I've used it to secure my Pelly case in the boot of my car by attaching it to a suitable piece of metal. However, the Kensington lock, as used on laptops and computers, etc., itself is readily picked. You may wish not to say how, but he had told me how you do it. I shouldn't.
Wondered where my laptop went yesterday.
By the soft the lock and twisting method is. Oh God! Right. Okay. It's right. I'm not even going to say where he managed to get that method from.
No.
I use this sort of Kensington lock. He sent me a picture, but with the use of a decent padlock, I can secure the case as a budget option. As per most security measures, the budget option won't survive a full-on attack, cable cutters, paper rock, etc., etc. But, that's worrying that it's that easy to do. But that's probably a good warning to those that are using that system, though.
Yeah, well, maybe. But then also, many car companies are easy to, use your car key, you get the AA, they come with a tool, don't they? And they just open your car for you. I think a lot of anything that's a physical lock is probably pickable in some way.
I remember there was a, it doesn't matter now, it was a certain Vauxhall years ago that was so easily done by just somebody putting a screwdriver in and turning it. And I thought, that can't be that simple. But it was. I mean, fortunately, things have changed somewhat. But you're right. I mean, if somebody really wants to take your stuff, they've got some wire clippers or whatever, they'll just have it, won't they? Mm-hmm. You don't, in terms of security, and we've talked about that, I think we mentioned it then, there are some photographers that actually wrap their cables now round things like radiators, etc. So people can't just wander off with their kit. But you don't generally do that, though, do you? But you don't carry that much, though, do you?
No, exactly. I don't carry that much. And generally I know where the kit is and I can see it, and or it's in the storage cupboard at the hotel or something. I don't just kind of leave it on a wall outside the front of the hotel. But yeah, I don't really go down the route. If I was in a situation where my bag had to be a long way away from where we were, then perhaps I'd think a little bit twice. But no, normally what I do is just sling it over my shoulder as I'm moving between the venues and moving between the rooms. Just shove it under a table. That's normally what I do.
Have you ever used the usher to be a camera bag person? I have. I always think I've always thought, there's no coincidence that the word usher has the same letter starting it as the word useless, and I like to find useless or three a job during the day, because you know what they're like. They're just they've got a spreadsheet, but they don't act on any of it. But they've turned up with their nice suits and they drink beer. So I like to give them a couple of jobs during the day. And often being a camera bag wielder is one of those.
I've got to say that if I'm in one venue all day,
you don't need
I don't even have a bag. I have my little pouch, which is it's actually a RFID protected thing it's meant to be for pocket cameras, but I use that. So I have that on my belt. That has my spare batteries in it. Yep. A couple of spare memory cards, although I never change memory cards anymore. I have my two cameras with me, one lens on each, and that's it. I often don't even take the bag in.
So you're like a utility belt. You look like Batman.
It's not. It's tiny. It's smaller than a mobile phone. Just sits there.
Oh.
Yeah.
What about?
Remember, all I'm sticking in there is two batteries and two memory cards.
I don't want to tempt fate here, and I'm being very careful when I say this, but obviously leaving stuff in cars is not a great idea, though, is it? Because your insurance only covers you to a certain amount. I know we have the same insurance company, and my understanding of it is that you're only covered up to certainly not the amount of kit that you would keep in a car.
Well, I think mine covers. All I've got in the car is spare camera and a couple of lenses and bits and pieces like that. So,
right.
It's going to be like an X Pro 2 or X100 maybe.
In terms of security, do you ever are you careful about returning to your car? This is a loaded question.
No.
Because the photographer that I know, I don't want to say the name now, but I think I may have told the story with his name, who returned to his car, which essentially acted as a beacon, because it was clear he was the photographer, and he was seen by somebody in this big car park who was obviously waiting for wedding guests. And this is not an unusual thing, Wedding guests tend to take nice things to parties, including overnight bags and prezzies and stuff like that. And he was just waiting to see who would go to a car. And then this photographer's car was raided and all the stuff nicked.
Yeah, I mean, that's really unfortunate, isn't it? Really, really horrible thing.
Yeah.
But no, these aren't things that go through my mind. And, again, I don't want to tempt fate either. But,
No.
if you had contingency for everything that's ever gone wrong to a wedding photographer, you'd have no time to do any photos.
Do you mean you don't have your contingency pack?
Yeah, I've got a spare wedding dress in my car. I've taken crochet lessons. I know how to,
Sure.
I've got some special liquid that I can put in my mouth and suck red wine off the back of a wedding dress.
No, but surely
I've
things...
totally forgotten my cameras today, though,
Kev.
but it's all good.
Kev, surely things like, your wheel changing kit. So you put your little overall on and you've got your rubber gloves. Have you got your wheel changing kit?
No, I always take a man from the AA with me to every wedding just in case.
I know, you are right. You can't possibly be prepared for every... Well, that's the Boy Scouting law, wasn't it? Be prepared. Right, let's enough of this. Let's get to our guest this week. And it's a revisit to an American wedding photographer and Fujifilm ambassador now. Reggie Ballesteros, who, when I last spoke to him, was in the midst of making the switch from Nikon to Fujifilm, and the X-T3 in particular. We get quite a few "should I make the shift?" or "even though I have Fuji, I'm not sure I'm ready to make the complete jump" mails and questions. So we thought it was timely to reference a guest who's not just made the switch, but gone on to represent the brand too as an ambassador. Though we'll not be talking about that as such today. This is more a chat to find out the whys of changing, which for once is not actually about the compactness of the system, as you'll find out. So we talk dynamic range, we talk his recipes for working with skin tones and so on. He has subsequently released the presets he mentions, and he has moved into the X-T4 of late too. But this is a timely chat, as I say, to address the messages we receive about switching, about changing across, and the inevitable questions photographers ask themselves. Here's Reggie B. So Reggie, congrats on the YouTube channel, which is growing fast, isn't it? The Fujifilm community seems to have really embraced you. You must be really happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, so when the X-T3 came out, I was really inspired by, the fact that it had such, powerful video capability. And, having been interested in YouTube and kind of like the strategy behind it, I kind of jumped on knowing that the X-T3 was going to be a very niche audience, and I started trying to push out content just to help others who either just got an X-T3 or maybe considering switching from a different system to the X-T3, especially working through all the problems that I had coming from a Nikon system to Fuji. And yeah, I'm pretty excited that it caught on a lot more than I thought, just because wedding photography is really my primary focus. It's growing a lot faster than I had expected, but I'm definitely excited to kind of help others out in their journey to Fuji.
So, look, we've chatted with photographers who've come over from Canon, and we even had a Canon ambassador on the show. But not specifically yet from... I'm going to try not to say Nikon, because that's how we say it in the UK. It's Nikon. I've got to say Nikon, but not specifically yet from Nikon. What was the first Fujifilm camera you picked up, and why was that?
The first Fujifilm camera that I purchased was the X100S back in 2014, and it was actually a wedding gift for my wife. So she and I both had photography interests, but she always had more interest in the classical, film style, range finder style cameras, and I thought that as a travel camera it would be a perfect camera for her to kind of use, and she absolutely loved it. She hated the EVF. She wanted to use the optical viewfinder all the time, and I would borrow the camera a little bit and use the EVF. She's like, why is this on? Just because she really likes the classical framing of a viewfinder and just kind of like catching the moment, and So that's where my Fujifilm kind of experience started was with the X100S.
One of the things I noted on the film that you made about your switch across from Nikon is that the Fujifilm gear you've now selected now actually weighs more than that you were carrying around before. Now, you do kind of answer the question in the film, but for those that haven't seen the film, so why that switch? Because for most people, it's the weight, isn't it? Initially, it's the weight.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing that I wanted just to keep it honest, because I'm part of a lot of Fujifilm Facebook groups, and everyone has these specific reasons why they switch over to Fujifilm. And directly for wedding photography, when I'm out in the field on a wedding day, I do not really strive for a lightweight kit. I want to go for ergonomics or quickness, so I opt for having the battery grip just so that it can balance better with the large aperture glass. And as far as the lens selection goes, I really like to go for the brands basically kind of like flagship, or they're very famous lenses for their character. So typically on Nikon, I was shooting with a 28 millimeter 1.4, a 58 millimeter 1.4, and a 105 millimeter 1.4. But they didn't have any direct equivalents in the crop sensor like field of view for those lenses. So I kind of opted to have a little bit more range. So I had the 16 millimeter 1.4 is really, really, really awesome lens on Fuji. It's pretty much my favorite lens just because of how close it focuses. But it didn't really give me all the range that I needed to, I was going from I had a 20 millimeter 1.8 as well on the wide end for Nikon. So I needed to try to bridge all that range, but I couldn't really settle on just having like a 16 millimeter and a 35. I still wanted that in between range to get closer to a 28 millimeter full frame equivalent. So I opted for having more lenses. So the 16, the 23, the 35, the 56, obviously, because that's a very great portraiture lens. It's also a very great documentary lens as far as kind of taking a step back to pull those candid moments. And then I have the 90 millimeter f2 just for the sake of having reach if I need it. I actually don't pull it out that much during the wedding day, but it's basically my emergency range lens. I don't personally use zoom lenses, so that's why you don't see me having the 50 to 140 millimeter zoom lens. But yeah, it's more of at this point I was adjusting to the system and trying to figure out what lenses I could kind of part with. And I'm still, between the 23 millimeter and the 35 millimeter 1.4, I still can't figure out which one I'd rather just leave at home to make it lighter. So I take all of them, and it ends up being like a smidge heavier than the Nikon system that I had. But at the end of the day, the weight savings on the wedding day wasn't really a factor for me, just because I am younger, and I do have a hold-fast sling that I carry two bodies with, so it's not really an issue for me as far as weight. It was more about having the ergonomics and just being able to not have to switch the batteries out as fast, just because the battery life of I think 2 Fujifilm batteries is closer to one of Nikon's versus it's something that I didn't want to have to worry about. So for me, one of my biggest motivators for making this, it wasn't really a switch, it was more because I already had a pretty much full Fujifilm kit, was to condense my systems down to one, just because I noticed that when I was out shooting every single day, documenting my family, going out for travel, I was using the Fujifilm system and getting very familiar with the controls, and just using an EVF. Really using the EVF was something that I was almost relying on.
I want to come back to the Nikon just for a moment. The D750 is known for the absolutely incredible dynamic range. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It had and still has for those who use it. I know people that use it and love it and would never part with it. You'd have to pay them a lot of money to part with it, and they probably wouldn't even do it then.
Yeah.
So how has the dynamic range thing really worked out for you? Because of course there's a difference.
I mean, if you ask somebody who's a true Fuji fan, that's the only camera that they love and use, they might say, oh, it's just as good as the Nikon D750, if not better. No regrets. But for me personally, I've used them out in the field on professional settings, and it definitely isn't the same. With the Nikon, you could underexpose a ISO 3200 photo and still be able to push it up a couple stops without any real noise reduction needed. you can just shoot correctly exposed at ISO 3200 on the Fuji if you're dealing with the RAWs, and you're going to have to introduce a little bit of noise reduction. It was something that I was not very familiar with my current Nikon workflow, so just being able to embrace that, I needed to add some noise reduction, I needed to adjust the sharpening, I needed to adjust the masking and all that stuff was something that I had to get used to. But I think with the EVF, it kind of helped me to not have to rely on underexposing. With the Nikon, you're using a DSLR, which you can't really preview the exposure or have even a live histogram showing when you're shooting, especially those very fleeting moments where the lighting is all changing. But with the EVF, you can already preview that, and you can make sure your exposure is very close to accurate without even, so that you don't have to do any adjusting in post. So I think the EVF has countered the fact that the dynamic range is there, especially because of the EVF has a histogram as well as the highlight warnings. As far as my approach goes, I don't underexpose. On Nikon, I would underexpose just by default. So, but with Fuji, I'm always trying to expose very correctly. And if I'm going to underexpose on purpose, for me personally, I only do that at the base ISO. A lot of people say that the sensor technology, you can do it at like ISO 800 or something, but for me, it doesn't seem to be as clean as just doing base ISO. At base ISO, you can push back the shadows maybe 2.5 stops at most, but you're going to have to put some noise reduction. But, for the most part, a lot of my clients are consuming their photos in the digital realm. So whether it be on, a website or their Instagram or something like that. And it's only, for me, just because of the age demographic of my clients, the printing is something that I'm trying to get more people to do as far as the printing and the albums go. But for the most part, nitpicking based on, 100% zooming for a print is not as big of a concern for me than something that looks great on, Instagram or Facebook at this point.
So San Francisco is a lot sunnier than the UK. I can tell you that.
Yes.
One of the things I first noticed when using a Fujifilm camera against the Canons is the sheer difference in how details are registered on those exceptionally hot days. How are you opening up these shadows?
I actually made a video on this if people want to check it out. But the way that I maximize the dynamic range for shooting against the sunlight for the most part is, one, you got to light it properly. You have to you can't just put them in full shadow and just hope it's gonna come back up. You have to be kind of understanding like what type of shot you're going to take. But if I'm going to take a shot that I'm going to rely on bringing it back in post, one thing I do is I put it in bracket mode, which is super, super nice. On the X-T3, you can bracket at 11 frames per second, and I'll bracket the shot at base ISO. And then from there, I'll kind of play with each file to see which one has the most information. And then in Lightroom, I actually use a graduated filter to underexpose the sky a little bit and bring back the exposure of the subject and kind of brush it out. And I kind of overview that technique in one of my YouTube videos of maximizing the dynamic range of a Fuji system.
One thing you said on your film is that you had to make a lot of changes to your photography style in order to embrace the X-T3, and I think we're establishing that as we're chatting now. So to embrace that camera as your main pro camera body now, you've had to adapt the way that you work. Now, for some people, that would be a strange way round, wouldn't it? Because changing your style for a camera, not changing a camera to suit your style.
For me, like the one thing that I think is immensely helpful is that it's going to expose my mistakes a lot. So if I make a mistake in composition with lighting or anything, the X-T3 is not going to forgive me for that. And as a wedding photographer, after being in a wedding photographer for 5 years, I felt like it's a great next step for me to up my game as far as composition and lighting go, because I cannot make mistakes with that. And I do feel that I have enough experience to kind of in the field be able to adjust and know when I'm making that mistake because of the EVF. So as far as, with depth of field, even if you have a shallow depth of field photo on a full frame, if your composition is bad, it's still going to be bad. It's just blurred out a little bit more so people can't notice it. But on the Fuji, you're going to, if you have like a distracting line right behind the couple's head or something, it's gonna be obvious. So the EVF will help you kind of see that. But at the same time, once you nail a really good framing of your subject on a crop sensor, it's going to look awesome just because everything is so sharp. Everything is going to be more focused. Those shapes that you're using to frame the subject are going to be more bold. And that's something that's really, I think for me, that I've really been happy with my photos coming out. I don't think there's a big shift in my style. I think it's just shifted in the way that I want it to evolve.
It just finally, there's one. Well, it's not just one thing. It's many things that I've noticed about your work that I like. The skin tones. You have a particularly good skin tone across all your photographs. Just take me through that process just a little bit. I know that you're going to be releasing these presets, so you can't divulge too many details, but just take me a little bit through that and how you found that change. Because I think for a lot of people, that's the hardest thing when they swap from Nikon or Canon or whatever they're swapping from.
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed that when you switch to any camera system, or for example, when you shoot with a second shooter who doesn't shoot with your camera system, that camera calibration panel, the one at the all the way bottom that no one really messes with, that really helps to kind of bridge whatever camera brand you are using to match your current style. And I do a lot of adjustment with that. They have a shadow highlight and like these saturation curves in there. It's different from the HSL. It's more just about a global color shift for that sensor. And I mess with that around quite a bit. So when I ported over my preset to Fujifilm, that was where most of the work was going into. And then as far as my skin tones go, I mean, to be honest, being a portrait and wedding photographer, that is pretty much what I'm dialing in every single time I edit a photo. If it's not a very pulled back conceptual photo, I'm always spending most of my brain power making sure that the skin tones are just right. So that comes a lot with, the white balance. And then if there's a little bit too harsh red or, some type of green hints in the skin tones, I might adjust the HSL just a little bit to kind of fix those. But it's something that, thank you for saying that, just because that makes me feel a little bit better about myself. But it's something that I pride myself in trying to make sure that when I edit, to always make sure the skin tones are looking great, just because I photograph mostly humans and people, so it's my job to make them look their best. So I want to make sure their skin doesn't look like an alien or something like that. So
well, I promise you it works really, really well. Reggie, we're going to share your links on the on not only on the FujiCast website, but of course on some of the apps that you listen to your podcast through. You'll also see these links as well. Thank you very, very much for your time. Your work is incredible. Really, really enjoyed having a chat with you. And one of the wonderful things about this podcast is linking up with people all around the world, such as yourself. I know Kevin takes the rise out of me constantly for getting excited about talking to anybody from any other country. Yeah. But I actually think that's one of the greatest things about the community of YouTube, and your YouTube channel is growing for that reason, that you're such a an approachable person, it seems, on screen, and long may that reign, and I'm hoping the channel just goes from strength to strength, Reggie.
Awesome, thank you so much for having me, Neil.
Thanks to Reggie Ballesteros, aka Reggie B, for his time today, and we'll leave a link in the show notes if you want to see more or hear more of Reggie, as his YouTube channel too is starting to now gain some momentum. And talking of hearing more, if you want more Mullins, you can. Every Thursday he swaps camera for headphones and a can or two of the show sponsors' special Incapable Staircase Porton Hill Estate wine in a can. Drink responsibly, kids, as at 3:30 UK time he becomes country boyo for an internet radio show that embraces Kev's love for country music. We'll link as ever in the show notes, or if you already know of incapablestaircase.com, you know where to find him Thursday at 3:30 p.m. And then on Friday, it's my own podcast, which is on all podcast players. Just search up Photography Daily. We take a Friday photo walk as ever, just you, just me, with our cameras, me with a microphone as well, and a mailbag full of inspiration from those who make pictures or have an interest in photography. This week we're on the Isle of Wight, the southern island just off the coast of England, not the one where trawlermen are throwing insults at each other from two different countries. Move on. But the quiet place that in parts time seems to have quite forgotten. We talk about woodland photography, how a return to making pictures rescued one listener from a dark place, becoming an animal photojournalist, and the conversation about making pictures of children if you're a street photographer continues, a debate that's been building on the show. Plus, this week we're joined by British fashion and portrait photographer Rankin, the founder of Dazed and Confused, famously known for his pictures of Bowie, Madonna and Queen Elizabeth II, also known to be a cultural disruptor, is Rankin. He is known for his forthrightness.
A lot of people, when they become successful initially, they believe their own hype, and you pump it up and inflate it. And I mean, I just think that there's a part of me that's just, a kid from a working class family who've done well, who never had anybody really be successful. So I was always going to be a bit of a bad, I was never going to deal with that particularly well.
That's Rankin on Photography Daily this coming Friday. Available wherever you get your podcasts or on photographydaily.show. Right, back to your questions. We've got Tickety Boo coming up soon, which is our book of the week. Book of the week, Tickety Boo. Tickety Boo.
How are you feeling today?
Tickety Boo. It also sounds like the train thing. Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo, Tickety Boo.
No, that's the Tickety booth. That's where you go and get your tickets. Where are you going to buy now? I'm going to buy the Tickety booth.
Sounds like a station somewhere in Wales, doesn't it? Tickety booth. Right. Helen Fennell. Hi, Kev. Hi, Neil. I haven't heard from Helen for ages.
I know. I love Helen.
Yeah.
Hello, Helen.
Hope all is well. Thank you for the podcast. You know how it goes. Now I'm commuting to an office again. The podcast keeps me company on the journey to and from work. I did actually, funnily enough, notice that there was an uptick in the audience levels when we got back to normal working again in September, and people seem to be going back to work listening in cars and trains.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Over lockdown, I've been contemplating photographic genres. I love looking at documentary photography. The range of topics and ideas which opens windows onto worlds I'm unlikely to encounter myself is fascinating. It's a very good reason to follow documentary. I have, however, come to the conclusion that as much as I love this genre, I am terrible at it myself. A bit like singing, I shall not subject the world to my efforts, but shall enjoy the work of those more talented in that area than myself. Or you can just sort of sing in the shower, and everybody sounds like Robbie Williams in the shower, don't they? I wonder whether there are any genres you love, but you're not. It's not going to be your own photographic strong point. Sending best wishes on the 6:54 to London Waterloo. You're not standing up.
6:54.
6:54. God, that must bring back memories for you, Kev. That sort of journey.
Yeah, well, I used to get the 5:40 train.
What, to London Waterloo?
To Paddington.
To Paddington?
Yeah, from Kemble to Paddington, 5:40. Oh,
5:40?
good Lord.
God, what time did you get up for that then, Kev?
It's a 20-minute drive to Kemble, so 5:40, I would probably be getting up about 5:45, jump in the shower really quickly, and then in the car, yeah.
Blimey.
Yeah, it was awful.
Well, all those people in Malmesbury Valley, like James Dyson, don't you lot just all have helicopters?
He doesn't go in his helicopter anymore.
Doesn't he?
He stopped going after, who was it? Somebody after the Leicester owner.
Oh, terrible. But is that the reason he stopped? It wasn't because he was outed because of the green or the not so green nature of it?
No, I don't think so. I think it was that. He used to fly over our house every day, twice a day. He only lives about 8 miles away, and he used to come to work every day in a helicopter. Yeah. So now we see him zooming around town in his, he has a driver, but his, posh, whatever he's got.
He must have an electric car, surely.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know.
Dyson, of course, were working on one, weren't they? Apparently.
No, they were, yeah, but then they stopped.
Do you remember when I came to stay that time, and I stayed in the hotel? What's the hotel that I stay in when I come to your place?
Did you stay in the Rose and Crown?
It could have been the Rose and Crown.
It wasn't the Old Bell, was it?
No, not the Old Bell. That's the expensive one, isn't it? The one just right. Yeah.
A friend of mine was going to go and stay. They've got new owners now. The Old Bell. It's really nice. It is really nice.
Yeah, it's a lovely place.
And he was going to look at a hotel room, but it was 870 quid.
Oh my word! What do you get for 800 quid?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
God.
That's what I was thinking.
No, my one was considerably less than that. But I went down to breakfast in the morning, and it was a very, very, very quiet room. But there was one guy that was obviously working on Dyson stuff, and I just felt after a while I should say hello to him because it was that awkward thing, all right, sniffing a bit, all right. And I asked him, what, I said, you travelling here? You doing what? Are you working? Turned out that he was due to talk to James Dyson about batteries, but then he couldn't tell me any more. And I said,
it's all top secret.
Is that about cars? He said, we probably said too much, and he sort of finished his toast and ran off.
Yeah, that whole period was really weird because there was people. They moved. They bought the old airfield then at Hull Abington, put a big wall up.
Right.
and a whole load of people, because I know a lot of people who work at Dyson were like going to work down at Halabbington, and it was like, oh, well, are you doing the same thing? No, not really. Oh, well, what are you doing down there then? Oh, just something different.
You don't buy an airfield if you're making more Hoovers, or should say Hoovers, vacuums, do you? You're
and then he gave it up anyway, so they all came back.
Well, anyway, back to Helen's question. Documentary photography. I suppose the thing about documentary photography, and I know that she said, you were very, very honest, Helen. I'm terrible at it myself, she said. But of course, there are many genres within documentary. See, I would love to do the sort of the hard-hitting documentary, but I don't know whether I've got the personal guts to do it. I think I'd have the skill, but along with that comes a great deal of courage. I'm not sure I've got that courage. But there's lots of different bits of documentary. I mean, some people do documentary and it's more about objects, isn't it? Not about people at all.
Yeah. No, listen, the thing that I pricked my ears when I read that email, when you just read that email, was that, Helen said she's not very good at it. And that's so subjective, so subjective. You don't have to be good at something if you're enjoying it. Okay, that's if you get personal reward from it, then that's all that matters, really. There was a thread on the Facebook group the other day about street photography. With some very valid points, and people saying that it's people walking down the street and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, absolutely, I totally agree with that.
So in what respect, people walking down the street, what do you mean? That it's just snaps of people on the street? People,
people. Okay. And that's true. But at the same time, if that's what you're interested in, or that's what you enjoy doing, or that's what you enjoy looking at, that's what you enjoy putting on your website, etc., then, there's nobody should be there to judge that, I don't think, personally. No, that's not to say that, that's an excuse or a crutch to say that, well, I should be a Magnum photographer because, I'm taking pictures of people walking down the street and they're good pictures of people walking down the street. That's not the point. But documentary, when we get to the book in a moment, the Tickety Boo stuff, there's pictures in there that are very much snapshots, but it's definitely documentary. It's made a book. He's a very well-established photographer who's made an entire career out of this kind of stuff. Yes, of course, if you hold yourself up to the candle of the established, or the illumination of the established documentary photographers out there, you're going to look at that and think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do something like that. But then at the beginning, they probably thought the same thing. I think I said it last week. It's that whole thing. I'm absolutely very guilty of this. Putting yourself in the situation of being able to do something or start something. The greatest barrier to getting something done is just starting it, isn't it? As soon as you start it, you'll roll with it. Yeah. And I'm slapping myself on the wrist for this, because I have a whole load of things that I'd love to get on with, and I'm forever putting barriers in the way.
What do you mean, projects?
That's ultimately it. Especially something like that's very much open to interpretation. It's not about being good at it or bad at it. It's about producing something that you think is important. As I said many, many times, a picture doesn't have to be good. It just needs to be important. And, I stand by that.
Peter, I'm going to prescribe you a book by Peter Fraser that, Helen, I think you're a member of the patronage anyway on Photography Daily, and we talked about this book called Two Blue Buckets. Have you ever read Two Blue Buckets or seen Two Blue Buckets by Peter Fraser, Kev?
No.
So Peter Fraser is a well-established, well-known. Well, he's a very good documentary photographer and art photographer, and the book is called Two Blue Buckets, and it really is. It's just observations of stuff. If I randomly choose I've just got the book here. Randomly choose a page. It's the end of a bit of steel tubing, or here we are, a steamed up window on a cold day. A picture that he's seen, a road sign that says Dark Lane, just happens to be taken in the dark, surrounded by greenery. It's just observations rather than thinking, right, this needs to be, as you say, the next Magnum classic. And that's by a well-established photographer, Peter Fraser.
I'm looking at that now, that book, Two Blue Buckets.
Two Blue Buckets.
It took me quite a while to find it on Amazon, because I typed in Two Blue Buckets. I kept getting bucket.
You do.
Axe.
Actually,
mop and bucket.
You do. You get a lot of that before you get to the book. But what about, Helen also asked, is there genres, or are there genres that you would like to do, Kev, that you're not? Genres that you love, but genres you love, but are never going to be your photographic strong point.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't overly thought this through, but yeah, I mean, I would, I'd love to be believe it or not, I'd love to be able to do, very, very high end portraiture. I love some of the stuff like Wayne Johns produces and people like that. I love all of that. I don't think I would ever have the creativity, the knowledge of lighting, the retouching skills. I mean, well, saying that, no, it's just not true, is it? Because I can learn lighting just like Wayne learned lighting. I can learn retouching. I could do it. And here I am putting another barrier in front of me.
We'll take a leaf out of a photographer like Dan Winter's book. I mean, Dan Winters is an extraordinarily good portrait photographer over in America with all those marvelous pictures of people like Tom Hanks. And he subscribes to I just move my lights around till it looks good.
Well, that's it. Isn't
I'm sure it's not
There's a
quite
lot of
like
smoke
that.
and mirrors in the world of photography.
But I mean, I know Dan is a lot more skilled than that. But there was an interview that he did with somebody where that's what he said. I just move them around until
Yeah, but it's true, and you will find a lot of the people that have done well in their careers from photography are honest. They're just honest about it. I mean, you listen to a David Bailey interview.
Yeah.
And he's just like, it's just I just use his fucking camera to take pictures. He doesn't care about the camera or anything, and
yeah,
that's it, isn't it? It's just a tool. You don't have to be. I'm trying to be careful how to phrase this now. It's not like you need a degree or you need to be a super brain to be a photographer. It's not. You need to be a certain level of educated personage to be a brain surgeon, for example.
Yeah.
Not everybody can just be a brain surgeon, but I don't think you can class photography in that establishment. There's a hell of a lot of who that goes on as well. For example, I'm going to be doing hopefully pretty soon some behind the scenes works with a music band, and doing their album cover and things like that. And that's entirely because, I've stuck some stuff on Twitter about my radio show, and then, we struck up a conversation and we had a mutual friend, and it's who and that'll be great. Cause I'd really love to get into that. I mean, they're not a big band or anything. We're not going to be going around the world and touring and all that stuff, but they do gigs, and they, I will be doing the behind the scenes stuff, and, going to the pub with them afterwards, taking pictures, all that kind of stuff. That's great. That's what I'm really looking forward to. But you don't need to be a brain surgeon to do that. You just need to know the right people in many cases.
Rock and roll, Kev. Rock and roll.
Yeah.
If you
I
wondered if you were going to get into rock music and pop as well. If you happen to be popping into Bryan Adams at any stage to do his pictures, can you remind him he owes me 20 quid?
Yeah, I will. Don't worry.
Right. Tickety Boo, book of the week.
Tickety Boo.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Tickety Boo. So, Tickety Boo, it's square and yellow, and on the front, in red words, it says Tickety Boo. It's a hardback. I'll read the blurb. It's literally just been released. So, Tickety Boo is a block of a book. It's reasonably blockish, with more than 200 images edited from smartphone photographs taken during Charles H. Traub's everyday ramblings over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
The English expression Tickety Boo loosely translates as everything is okay, but maybe everything isn't. There you go. That's what I thought. Therein lies the enigmatic crux of the images contained in this book. The smartphone is an ingenious companion that readily makes a photographic response by Traub quick and unobtrusive, a third eye, if you will. A stream of consciousness flows in his response to places, things, and people that catches eclectic whimsy. That's nice, isn't it? Eclectic whimsy. I think I might have an eclectic whimsy. I certainly had it once. I had to go to the doctors. His subjects are ambiguous and out of context, yet once organized together within this book, create a kind of pictorial completeness, both soothing and disquieting. The photographs in each spread vividly amplify each of other, leading the viewer to the next sequence. The mundane becomes animated, and in the end, this is a book about the delirious conditions of our time. That, I think, is the best blurb I've read. I love that. The mundane becomes animated, and in the end, this is a book about the delirious conditions of our time. What do you think about that, Neil?
Yeah, I think it's museum worthy, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. So, okay. So, first of all, have you ever heard of Charles Traub?
No, I haven't.
So I'd come across his work before because I'd seen similar books to this. This is the only book of his I have. But yeah, he's quite a well-established photographer. I would say he's probably in his 70s now.
Okay.
American. Yeah, he's an American photographer. But yeah, he's not. He's not the first name that will trip off most people's tongues. But he's got a Wikipedia entry, put it that way. Yeah. And literally, it's just images. There's like next to no text. You have the entry page and all that kind of stuff. It just says these smartphone images were taken between 2016 and 2021, anywhere and everywhere. And there you go, and that's the brutality of it. We open up with so
no rules, Kev, at all. It's just
no rules. Yeah, but it's true what the blurb says. And this is I think something that's important for people who are thinking about making their own books, because each image does lead into the next one. It's very, 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 very well curated. This book,
okay,
very well curated.
So there is direction.
There's direction throughout it all. So, for example, page 3 and 4. Page 3, at first glance, I'm thinking it's a picture of somebody in a mask, a face mask, obviously, during COVID times, which it is. And I thought, it's a nurse. But then on closer inspection, it's actually a photograph of his phone. Oh. He's doing a FaceTime with somebody.
Right.
Then the next page, or another phone presumably, then the next page is a set of blue gloves on a table in a restaurant.
I just found this. I found this picture. Yeah.
Fast forward a bit. There's a photo, and these are all snapshots. But the cleverness of this is the way that they all interlink. Of a statue with a big blue eye, and then the next page is some copper rings in a factory. So you have that circular approach to it. So yeah, I mean, it's some of the images actually are pretty wonderful. There's one of my favorite ones is it's a full bin in a tube station,
right?
And because of all the troubles that they had in London with the IRA and all that,
they covered those up for a long time. You couldn't find a bin, could you, in London?
That's right. They took the bins away, but now what they often do is they have transparent bags, so you just have the bin rim at the top, and then hanging underneath is a transparent
all the stuff
bin bag, so you can see all of the detritus of people's stuff in there. And I think that's really interesting. It's just a picture of that, this bag of rubbish. But actually, we walk past these things all the time, and you never think twice about them. But it makes quite an interesting image, I think. And then the image opposite is another hanging object. It's a bucket. Not a blue bucket, there's only one of them, but it's a bucket hanging on a wall. It's really, really, really clever. We kind of move through food and graffiti and all of that kind of stuff.
It's a really clever one of the church with two spires on either side. Then the opposite page has the spires are basically two long walls, and in between there's an open toilet. But actually, the mirroring between the two is quite ingenious.
Yeah, it's very, very clever. Yeah. I mean, in some cases, I'm looking at two different images and thinking they're one. There's this market stall kind of scene where it just almost looks like it's the same picture, but it's not. And it's not even taken near the same time. It's really, really, really very. It's the curation in this book is the cleverness of it.
Do you think he went out looking for the images, knowing that he had one, and thought, right, what makes picture number 2?
Well, I don't know. That's quite interesting, isn't it? I wouldn't have thought that it'd be possible for him to do that, because, you would just end up searching for something and it would take forever. But I suspect maybe he had, on his, because of course, remember, he did all this on his mobile phone. Yeah. He perhaps had folders or whatever that were headwear, another folder that was light, another folder that was marketplaces, another folder that might say rubbish, rubbish as in litter, and so maybe as he was going along, he's and that's a great way of reminding yourself to search for stuff, isn't it? This is, again, something that we talk about all the time, and it's, if you give yourself an objective, something to look for, you become an observer. Photography is about observing. It's not about taking pictures. It's about observing first and then pressing the button, and anybody can press the button. Having that kind of, that's...
Yeah, this is. It seems equally like one of those happy accident projects where one day he thinks, actually, this all works beautifully together. There's cohesion. There's certainly a direction, as you say. It's well curated. Never put your camera away.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm not saying none of these images would be able to be printed. He's not going to be able to do a large exhibition with this, I wouldn't have thought, because they're all taken on mobile phones. But they look perfect in this book, and it's really, really interesting. And actually, this should be a galvanizing story for a lot of people, I think, because these essentially are 200 snapshots but with a thought process.
Yes.
And even, like I say, I don't know how he's done it, but even if that thought process is simply he has folders on his phone for images that he kind of sees, then, he might be sitting down having a coffee, scrolling through those folders and thinking, right, okay, yeah, I haven't done many like statues for a while, and statues is one of my folders. So I'm going to go out and look for a few statues. And then you become, like you say, you observe more, you see more, you enjoy it more, I think, rather than just wandering around thinking, no, there's nothing happening today.
Yeah.
In any sense, you'd look at one of these pictures in isolation and probably think, I could have taken that.
Snap,
And yes, of course, because that's what they are. They are snapshots.
But when they're together,
the cleverness of it is in its entirety.
Yes. Do you use your phone much? Because I know for a while you used your phone a lot, didn't you?
I do use my phone. I mean, I've got some pictures from my phone that are priceless.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I never really think of my phone. I don't think about going around taking pictures with my phone. It's usually a situation that arises that I grab my phone out and take a picture of whatever's happening.
Tickety Boo. It's
Tickety Boo.
Widely,
Tickety Boo. Charles Traub.
It'll be widely available. I've seen prices on here in British terms anyway, anywhere from £23 up to £35.
Well, the RRP on the back is £38.
Right. Oh,
nice.
Good one. Thank you very much, Kev. Question. It's your Tickety Boo. Yeah, Tickety Boo. I didn't realise that it actually meant that you're okay, but it might not be okay. I thought Tickety Boo was, everything's firing on all cylinders. Thanks very much. Thanks for answering and asking rather and moving on. Yeah,
I always assumed it was meant to be like a little, I'm okay, but don't ask me anything else kind of thing.
No, I always thought it was more positive than that. That kind of like, cool, everything's cool. Let's, But,
it might be because I'm from Wales and, everything's more depressing there.
Okay. Oh. Right, go on. Your question from the Facebook group. I think we've got time for one or possibly two. We got time. Oh, we've got time for one probably. If is it a QQ or an LQ?
It's an MQ, but it's relevant because it's about phones. Okay. So Anthony Hibble, this question came in 12 weeks ago, and he says, I'm sending a question while I'm on my holiday in sunny Norfolk. So, Anthony, I hope you had a nice holiday 12 weeks ago in sunny Norfolk. Wants to make sure I took plenty of photos while away with the kids and packed my X100T.
Yes.
However, I have actually used my phone as a camera instead and have been really impressed with the quality of the photos. He says he has a Google Pixel 4a, which has worked in different light conditions, especially in the evenings. Obviously, the lack of manual settings is not as good as a real camera in inverted quotes, but made me wonder if professional photographers like you guys use your phones at all when making photos, family holidays, or maybe even on a job.
Yeah.
Thanks for your awesome podcast. Listen to last week's episode on the way here, and we'll be listening to Monday's episode on the way back, which was 12 weeks ago.
Okay. I'm glad we got to you in a timely sense.
Yeah.
We get to everybody sooner or later. We do. I do use the phone actually for professional work, but I tend to use it for video for professional work. So it tends to be sort of support material for some of the photo films I'm making, for example, because it's great just to occasionally, and it's small that you can leave it in places to do like a time lapse or something without having to engage your other cameras that you want to use. I use, for example, I've got a little knick-knack where you can sort of bolt it to, I've got a little bag of knick-knacks where you can bolt it.
Is it a knick-knack paddywhack?
Knick-knack paddywhack, that you've got it. Give the dog a bone. Bag. And it's called exactly that, TM. And it's got all sorts of stuff that I can use to secure this phone to different places. For example, on the photo film I made when I went out to a sea fort, that would have been the one in the Solent, probably 4 years ago, but I remember I went into the cabin and I asked the captain if I could just put my phone there, and it was on what do they call them, one of those bendy attachments so you can really, anyway, Kev, the long and short is
gorilla sticks,
gorilla, that's it. And it was looking through the window, and I did this time lapse as we went from the start of the port to the fort, and then in the evening as the sunlight was falling over the fort. So I use it for that sort of reason quite a lot. And actually, you can, these days you can put it into a film, give it a bit of grading, and they all look good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get any real pleasure out of using a phone for, photography. That's why I say I don't really. You're right about being able to do things that you perhaps wouldn't be able to do with a proper camera, perhaps.
Yeah.
But then, you do you ever edit those things? Do you ever do it, with the pictures? Do they just sit on your phone forever? You certainly won't be able to print them very, extremely large. They're not going to be great in terms of noise correction, things like that. But That said, the mobile phone has become the Polaroid, hasn't it? You'd see a lot of the photographers in the past, they would use Polaroids first for their test shots, and to check lighting and everything, and now they use their mobile phones for that before they get the big bad DSLR or mirrorless or whatever they're using out. So it's certainly got a place, but it's this question comes up lots. Why can't proper cameras do whatever, all of the fancy stuff, the auto focusing or changing focus points and all that kind of stuff that phones can, and that's been answered to death. It's they're never going to do it. It's not relevant. It's total different R&D, and people buy cameras because they want to take pictures rather than necessarily have all of the bells and whistles and gimmicks that the phones will have. Should have. On
that front of, I can't find the particular picture, but there's a photographer and artist called Simon Buckley who made this incredible picture of in the rain in Manchester on his phone. That is in a particular piece of work about how he makes pictures when it goes dark. It's this fantastic project, Kev, about what happens after dark in Manchester. And one of his signature pictures was actually made on an iPhone 5, and the interpolation software, when he gave it to somebody to blow up as a big print, was so amazing. You can hardly tell the difference. So it can be done, but obviously it's a lot more complex, isn't it? Yeah,
and you're going to be, you're limited to lenses, you're limited to depth of field. There's a lot of limitations. But
in that big cupboard that you have behind you that has all that kit in that you're never going to use, have you ever invested in all those lenses that you can put onto your well, you would have had an iPhone at that stage, so it would have been for an iPhone. I bet you did. I bet you bought all the lenses so you could do the wides.
I had an entire anamorphic set of lenses.
See?
That I never used.
I knew you would. They're probably as good as the day you bought them, aren't they?
No, I think I stuck them on eBay.
Did you?
I think so, yeah.
That's a magic cupboard. You know what you should do is have sort of a big day at the Mullins studio with that people coming to buy stuff for the magic cupboard. I think it would go down well, Kev. What do you think?
I think it would.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
You make a fortune. Well, that's it for another week. If you've liked this or any of the week's shows, thank you. And if you can, of course, and feel it's relevant, we would love you to leave a review. If you can share the episode on Twitter or on Facebook, you're an absolute star. Keep sending your questions in. How do they do it on Facebook, Kev?
Top of the pin thread, the top of the group. Just stick them in there.
And we will get to them. Honest, we will. And if you want to email them in, click at fujicast.co.uk. Music from Blue Wednesday, supporting music from the incredible artlist.io, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.